What's up? Another Tuesday night. My name is Cedric Youngelman. This is BitcoinCenter. I'm joined by a special co-host, Ben Justman. What's up, Ben? How are you?
Hey, Cedric. Pumped to be here. Pumped to get into these topics with you. And I love this format.
Yeah, man. What are you up to these days in terms of Bitcoin? Are you like listening to any podcasts? Or are you just kind of like stacking and forgetting about it? Are you kind of bemoaning the whole 33% pullback here?
You know, I wish I could be buying the dip harder. And I've had a few people just that know I'm into Bitcoin and maybe are tangentially in ask me if I'm buying the dip, kind of looking to read my sentiment. And I don't really know how to respond. I feel like I'm speaking a different language because I've been Bitcoin and I didn't buy the dip anything special just because it's kind of a constant flow from the business getting paid in Bitcoin. So not worried by the dip. Thankful for the opportunity always. Definitely was expecting more this year, but kind of sets up a nice 2026. So feeling happy about that.
Do you think everybody was expecting more this year?
No one was making price predictions below 100,000. Even the people that I was like dunking on for being bearish were calling for 200,000 or at least 150 by the end of the year. I think 126 as the top, and who knows, could happen. Could get a real rebound, but 126 as a top for this year was definitely under what people expected. But the thing is with price predictions is everyone who understands Bitcoin predicts something more, but the majority of the world is predicting Bitcoin at zero. So if you average everything together, the bulls are doing pretty good.
Yeah, Andy Edstrom back in January on Bitcoin Matrix said Bitcoiners might not see the liquidity they're hoping for this year. And I think he's one of the few people who just kind of expressed you might not get to sell those sats at the 175, the 225, the 275, in 2025 that everybody was kind of hoping for, expecting. And it's like it always goes differently than the way the crowd expects. And then we think maybe our crowd is too small to be what everyone expects, but it always seems to go against the sort of the common consensus narrative.
But our crowd is definitely the crowd. Well, some of the crowd in the market, at least setting the tone in a lot of ways as some of the Bitcoin experts. But you're right. He was right that the liquidity just didn't come. And for all the listening I do, for all the research I do, just like as someone who's really into Bitcoin, really into learning about markets, I guess I didn't see it coming. And that's kind of a shock to like my ability to discern things, and kind of a reset to humble me once again in the ability to take off my bull tinted glasses and try and be a little bit more discerning. But the consensus view is that once Trump gets control of the Fed leadership and is gearing up for midterms and sends out the idea potentially of a stimulus check, 2026 is setting up for a crazy year. And so much in the backdrop of what's going on in 2025 is insanely bullish. It's just, that liquidity isn't coming or isn't here yet. And the nice action we have. But even like in the last couple of days, I was seeing like as we were correcting, it was a bunch of AI fear and stuff like that. And as we've corrected now, all I'm seeing is basically that Trump administration is going to backstop AI and provide any funding they need, because if AI fails, the United States goes into a crazy recession or can't pay its debts. Not that they can anyway, but it just really seems like the fire was put the fire was put out, and they're going to smother it and just make sure we survive to another day at any cost.
Yeah, I mean, if I was putting my tinfoil hat on, I can't tell if sort of the Trump regime doesn't want Bitcoin price to run because they still want maybe Wall Street and the ETFs and to stack before. And I think they want to put a lot of legislation in place so that they could sell treasuries after it runs. Or is it sort of price suppression maybe from our, Trump's enemies like abroad? the way maybe, JP Morgan has been very influential in controlling maybe the gold market and gold pricing. Maybe the United States is running up gold pricing right now. It's interesting. And maybe none of that's happening. So I don't know. I want to get into the topics with you. This is BitcoinCenter. Please hit like and subscribe. This is brought to you by Byte Federal. Go bank yourself. They got the point of sale, the crypto wallet, and the Bitcoin ATM, of course, and buy it and put it in self-custody. Francis, let's get into the show.
Let's be real, right? Praising Telegram for launching a Bitcoin wallet. I've always felt like with Haley.
Bitcoin, this digital currency that's out there that people say, oh, it might be the next big thing. What do you think?
I think it's rat poison.
Bitcoins. You never heard of them a few weeks ago? Now everybody's talking about them, but is it a currency?
I don't know. Or is it more like a stock? Or is it a tulip bulb?
Or is it
debate that?
Stupid.
To me, it smells like Ponzi scheme and the greater fool theory, right?
You do like 5 minutes of freaking research.
Well, good. Thanks for coming to my set talk.
Yes.
Don't buy shitcoins. Oh, man, I always get that wrong. All right. Bitcoin's recent rally. Do you agree? Is crypto finally dead? Go to the next one.
Matter of fact, they're kind of in the Ethernet. What are they?
There's some rumors that it's this Japanese guy, but others say no, that he's a fake name. It was a pseudonym. You're literally putting real money onto a system that we don't even know who created it.
It will come to a bad ending.
Is this the most exciting bull run ever?
Not for me. No, it's not.
Welcome to BitcoinCenter, the fast-paced show where the debate is the story.
All right, Ben, we'll do it a little differently this way tonight. I'll ask you set of all the topics. We'll kick it off and see what you're thinking. So the latest, Jack Mallers came out and said he was debanked by JP Morgan in September. His father was, he said, also debanked, who has a long history of not just banking with them, but is in the commodities exchange market of in Chicago. And then Grant Cardone jumped in the mix. And then part of this is they seem to be mad over maybe JP Morgan shorting or being influencing the strategy's price, share price. So what do you make of this?
I think that we got a little bit complacent as Bitcoiners and thought that we won when Trump won and enacted the Bitcoin reserve that with no teeth. And this is a reminder that there's still a long way to go before Bitcoiners and Bitcoin companies start getting treated with the or rule of law that they deserve to be treated. My cousin, on a family trip about a month ago, I finally got him into Bitcoin about a year ago. And he was laughing at the choke point 2.0 comments because he's still dealing with choke point 1.0 in the marijuana industry. And it's just kind of this continued thing that's going to keep getting swept under the rug, and they're going to keep attacking. Banks are going to keep attacking their competitors. And Strike is, I mean, Jack Mallers today or yesterday was saying, like, we're basically building a bank, but we're not allowed to say we're a bank. And so these big institutions see the writing on the wall, and Bitcoiners are not the ally yet.
Do you think JP Morgan's like, hey, look at strategy. They're trying to offer 8, 10, 12%. We're out here offering 2 to 4%, and we just don't want that to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, Strike's looking to offer the same thing on dollars, and until banks really get their world together in Bitcoin, and even then, they're probably not as competitive as people that are already in the Bitcoin sphere. It's a super competitive market, and the best rate wins, assuming risk adjusted rate wins. So yeah, they're going to be attacked with this, and it's definitely like, hey, they still have the power. They're still the 800-pound gorilla. They're still going to punch you down, and it's easy to get complacent with prices going up. So it's interesting to see this happen during a 33% dip.
Yeah, I also can't tell if this 33% dip is great for Wall Street because they're maybe taking all the leverage coins off people's hands. Let's move to the next one here. There was the Bitcoin for America Act was introduced. Does Congress's move to let taxpayers pay in Bitcoin make sense? How big of a deal is this?
I would say this is moderate deal. It's the first time I've heard of tax legislation around Bitcoin outside of just not taxing it, not taxing sales, not taxing using it as money. It's the first time that I've heard of an incentive structure that is a win for both sides. Congress gets to stack Bitcoin. They get a reason to put Bitcoin in the reserve. Is that in the bill? I got to ask you that. But also, Bitcoiners get a real reason to actually pay their taxes in Bitcoin, because in Colorado, you've been allowed to pay taxes in Bitcoin for at least 3 years. And I don't know anyone who would ever do that, because you pay the capital gains tax and you're giving Bitcoin to the government. So this is the first time I've actually heard of a reason that Bitcoiners would pay their taxes in Bitcoin.
Your company is Bitcoin preferred, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you have, how have you managed it up until now? I mean, you don't have to tell us, at a very high level, do you have concerns around receiving sats and then either paying either your cost of goods, your expenses, or even just other things and buying things with sats? Do you just maybe do it one way and just receive and never spend those? Is there an evolution here? Like, how do you think through that?
For the business, everything goes through KYC rails in the same place that I would sell and buy Bitcoin. So everything is tracked in that way, and I just get a sheet at the end of the year.
Did you pay capital gains or loss? Sort of do you deal with sort of gains and losses, realized or unrealized, and sort of track all that? Or is that you try to just not compartmentalize those sats and maybe not track that,
Well, I'm always trying to stack as many sats as possible. So selling is definitely something I try not to do, and I avoided for the first 4 or 5 years I was in Bitcoin. I was doing that by taking on just non-collateralized fiat loans to run the business, and the goal for out of debt, become free, and do that with as much Bitcoin as possible. But we didn't reach a price that I really wanted to rip the full Band-Aid off. So I sold a little Bitcoin to buy some infrastructure this year, and that is all kept into that same system. I get a tax report at the end of the year. I have my Satoshi Petroli tax guys working me through that. And I did at 86, I did a tax loss harvest. So hopefully that'll save me some tax money this year. So the dip came good if you bought the top and weren't going to sell anyway. You'd love to have more sats, but here we are.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to the next one. There's the big censorship debate. So rolling out BIP444, which would temporarily ban large op return data and even disable ordinal inscriptions. Is this an emergency fix against illegal data, fear mongering, or a dangerous precedent of censorship on Bitcoin?
I lean towards the dangerous precedent of censorship. If Bitcoin's freedom money, you're gonna get some people doing things that you don't like to do with it. And once you start censoring, and I've saw an argument that once you show you can censor, then you're going to be required to censor. And that's more from the mining perspective, from large miners. But one of the things that
argument, and it just at a very high level, it seems very logical. There's sort of yeah. I mean, I don't know if you compare it to, your door and your lock on your front door is not going to prevent every single criminal from getting in potentially, but it's still worth using and to prevent the riffraff from getting in and the less enabled or, abled criminals. Why wouldn't you want to prevent 99.9%?
Yeah, but and I think that's my house. Go for it.
Yeah, I get it. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. You're saying probably that's your house, and then this is.
I mean, that's my house. That's my livelihood, and Bitcoin is leans a bit more into the commons, and in the commons, you have to allow a little bit more freedom and flexibility if it is going to be a global common good than in your personal property. I understand the desire to run a node that doesn't display those transactions, and that's totally anyone's prerogative, but I'm not in the wanting to censor Bitcoin in any way camp. And I would, yeah. I've fallen onto that camp.
Yeah. All right. What about sort of maybe, meeting in the middle and not maybe blowing out the app return to 100,000, but like maybe just double or tripling or 10xing it, or, sort of listening to the community. I don't know, actually. I mean, when you say it like that, you raise some good points. And I'm really trying to balance, sort of like the idea of, like you could have a pool and say there's no rules here, but if people start, defecating in the pool, that's going to ruin the experience for everyone. And and maybe no one goes to the pool anymore, and that's sort of the public square or the commons. Like we need some sort of maybe decorum, and like what I'm having trouble weighing is sort of policy rules versus consensus rules as well.
Sure, and I'm a bit of a layman on the subject, but a turd in the punch bowl ruins it for everybody. But some bad inscription on the Bitcoin blockchain, most people, it sucks for anyone affected inscription, but it doesn't ruin the baseline protocol for everybody. Also, one more thing I heard. One more thing is I heard that the initial op return limit didn't exist. Initially, the op return limit didn't exist, and so it was a change to add an op return limit, and thus further change to decrease it. But ultimately, like, I'm just for less changes on Bitcoin and more freedom. And I guess this isn't necessarily a change on Bitcoin, and anyone could run their own node software. So, this is Bit 444, so it's a little bit different. I'm not in favor of some contentious thing. I think there's so much going on in Bitcoin that
I agree that
solidarity.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one. Commerce Secretary's $25 billion Tether windfall. As Howard Lutnick's once cheap 5% Tether stake balloons towards a $25 billion paper valuation, does the U.S. Commerce Secretary now sit at the center of the most glaring conflict of interest in Washington?
I would say that's a pretty United States focused interest is stable coins. So yeah, while it's a conflict of interest from the perspective of one specific company, the stable coins are such a powerhouse thing, positive thing for the United States government in increasing dollar hegemony and increasing tax receipts around the world. I don't know. I'm so ambivalent at this point. It's like all these people just have such conflicts of interest. They're so corrupt that it is what it is. And Lutnick being in favor of that, probably. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. The EU's single crypto supervisor, the European Commission, is reportedly planning an SEC-like agency for all crypto and stock exchanges. Does this pave the way for a true capital markets union or risk smothering innovation in smaller EU states?
Man, you got to think that this is going to mean more smothering, especially given the way the EU has treated Bitcoin. They're not going to love this. Curious what you think on this one, Cedric.
Dude, I think the EU is just massively behind. I don't think they want freedom for their people. I think they're reacting to the threat of both stable coins and Bitcoin, and centralization is their answer. And I don't think it's going to go well, like you said. I think it's going to be corrupt and just sort of smother sort of innovation or anything good. But we'll keep an eye on them. We'll keep an eye on the EU over there across the pond. All right, let's head over to the lightning round. This is BitcoinCenter. Please hit like and subscribe. We got a special co-host here, Ben Justman. And Ben, tell us a little bit about your wine. I love your wine. Yeah. I like the Merlot, I think, the best. And that was hard for me because I like the movie Sideways. And so I promised myself I'd never drink Merlot, but yours is actually pretty damn good. So,
hey, I appreciate that. I do get a lot of good feedback on my Merlot. It's just hard to get people to actually drink it because they've all seen the movie Sideways. And luckily, my dad planted a Pinot Noir vineyard right around the time that movie came out. So we benefited massively from that. But yeah, I make low intervention wine up in the mountains of Colorado in the highest elevation wine region in North America. And I'm a Bitcoin forward business. So Bitcoin preferred all always on my for sales of my wine. A lot of my time is spent talking to businesses about how to reach Bitcoiners, how to approach them, how to market to them, and what the best tools, the best way to approach using Bitcoin in the real world for the goods we need is best done. And the thing I keep coming back to is Bitcoin is not freedom money if we have to convert it to slave tokens in order to buy all the things we want. So building this Bitcoin economy is something that I've really felt like firsthand, but also I'm really motivated to continue working for.
That's awesome. And how do you say the name of your winery?
Peony.
Oh, like the flower? Like peonies?
Yes.
That's what I thought. All right, awesome. And where does the name come from?
My dad named his short-lived winery Peony Lane. So it's the namesake of my town, which is Paonia. It's a bastard spelling of peony because the United States Postal Service didn't like PAOE in the name. They didn't like the 3 vowels in a row, so they just ripped one off, and we got Paonia.
All right. Well, all right. Sounds awesome. Well, I love your wine. It's a great time to order it. Hopefully, if people should be able to order it now and probably get it for the holidays like Christmas and New Year's. But I already have some for Thanksgiving, so I'm a lucky guy. Let's get to the lightning round. I want to play that OG Andreas.
Summarize. Any data can be encoded as any data. One person's spam is another person's content. The power to decide what is and what isn't allowed is dangerous because it leads to censorship. It also leads to giving the developers power over the protocol, which will eventually be used by someone else. And if the developers are shown to be able to censor, then they will become required to censor in any and all jurisdictions where they live. And so that's extremely dangerous. And people will be able to put ordinals and shitpegs and JPEGs and NFTs and garbage and Bible verses. I already said garbage. And other stuff on the blockchain, whether we want them to or not. And so I would rather people put it in an op return where we can then disregard it, prune it, and not have to carry it anymore forever, than if they hide it in other places of the protocol because we made op return too hard. And so I actually think that's a better.
It seems like you guys are quite aligned. It's quite interesting that he showed back, kind of got back on the horn to kind of chime in on this. I just don't like the idea, though, of like we know it's an acknowledgement. We know you're doing things that I don't want to frame it as we don't want you to do, but we know you're doing things that are, let's just call it garbage. So like we built you a huge garbage pail, and I just find that they're still gonna put it in the places you don't want. I think it's just like they'll go into the garbage pail plus all the places you still don't want. I don't think it prevents or changes incentives that much. What do you think?
Yeah, a lot of the debate tends to be like, yes, it centers around the child porn dynamic because that's the main thing that everyone agrees is bad. But what's getting caught in the cross differentiate as to what's good, what's garbage, what's not. And the point of a freedom tech is to not have to make people like not give anyone the power to choose what is good and what is bad. So I don't necessarily know what the op return limit should be or where the other things can be stored in Bitcoin. But my base case is when you say we agree something's bad or we think something's garbage, I ask who, and I don't think anyone has the right to be that who.
I hear you. All right. My last final note on this is, though, I don't want more bells and whistles necessarily on Bitcoin unless it's more privacy and security. I don't want it to be like Ethereum or necessarily like anything in that direction. Like, I just want it to be great money and separate money from state. That's
I think the core principles of Bitcoin are sure that there's personal sovereignty, make sure there's 21 million coins, and those are the two that can't be infringed upon. But the rest is a gray area, and if you know, I don't know. There's a lot that's just out of our hands and can't be. Like, we can't really influence, and this I guess there's like a developer class that has influence over it, and you know, Bitcoiners can vote with their nodes and vote with their voices and everything, but ultimately I think a lot of what Andreas Antonopoulos says there is just that there's going to be a war to control developers in Bitcoin, and there needs to be talk now about how to deal with any changes in the future, and how just because like as these nation states start buying Bitcoin and building Bitcoin reserves, they're going to absolutely influence the developers more if they're not already. And so I don't think that this debate is that worthwhile outside of the sense that it's very important framing for future debates on topics like privacy and resilience.
All right, all great points. All right, let's move on to the next one here. The whale power struggle. So a mysterious whale opened an $87.6 million short, 3 times short on BTC. And meanwhile, others all held huge longs. Is this contrarian hedging by a smart money or a loaded bet that Bitcoin can't break higher? How do these multi-million shorts shape the crypto battleground? Do you even care, Ben?
Is this current?
This is current.
He's currently got an 87 million.
Hyperliquid. This is whatever hyperliquid is. We can monitor this stuff, and someone wrote about this particular trade.
I mean, you see these dead bodies float by all the time in the wrecked bot on Nostr. I don't know. That's a lot of money, but ultimately, like there's huge bets either way. This person could be hedged on a different platform.
Sure.
No, I don't think this is constant. The numbers are going to keep getting bigger, and people are going to get wrecked losing money. And in this situation, it seems like one or the other is going to get wrecked. So do you care? Do you pay attention to these whales?
Do I? No, I don't really care about this. I don't trade. So I think it's interesting though. And I think it's, my mind will get like a little fixated if someone makes one of these huge trades and it comes in within like 8 minutes of it happening. And it's just, you know, because you could see the tape and it's just something to kind of noodle on, but I don't care at all.
That's where I get interested, is when it's right before a big move to that. But at the same time, yeah, there's probably a million that we just don't even know about because the move didn't happen, or they got wrecked in the wrong direction. And we said, yeah, rough, you shouldn't have shorted Bitcoin. So I don't know. It's going to get more and more corrupt as the people on the inside of the money printer dials start wanting to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, let's get on to the next one here. Strategy pauses their buying. After 6 consecutive weeks of purchases, MicroStrategy announced it will not buy more Bitcoin this week. Is this a momentary breather or a sign that corporate buying is slowing? And who will fill that demand vacuum?
Man, it seems like corporate buying is at a serious nadir. They've pretty gotten wrecked over this past year. So that's wild to see, especially like I was having conversations with people like just expecting, you know, oh yeah, in the Bitcoin treasury companies haven't even really started buying yet. It turns out that was the peak of them buyback. I bet there's a lot of just volatility that they needed to have, a little bit of Bitcoin upside they needed to have, and they'll get reinvigorated again. But I think the polish is a bit rubbed off.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, you know, I can't help but wonder if it was insiders or OGs funding the treasury companies to get their liquidity around 100K. The weird thing about MicroStrategy not buying this week is what I want to hear what Paul has to say is it's and thanks for look, it's Paul Tarantino.
Hey guys,
you know, normal cause. We got Ben Justman here, but like, you know, the only thing I note about strategy pausing their buying after 6 consecutive weeks is like, do they just not want to buy the lows? Do they only buy tops? Like, I thought they were just going to buy consistently instead of only tops. And like, you would think the shareholders would want to buy more lows. So Paul, what do you note here?
My only note is that I think there's, I guess, a lot of analysis maybe, or reanalyzing their strategy in the face of what MSCI is saying. They're looking at changing the I don't know if it's a change of the rules or applying the rules that they've previously applied to what they consider just holding companies, or companies that just make investments. And if they're starting to view strategy as having 50% or more of the value of the company just held in Bitcoin, then they might eliminate them from the MSCI index. And if that happens, you could see other indices follow that. That could change a lot of the passive flows. That might change the structure of strategies game plan. And so maybe a pause is prudent in order to reevaluate.
Do you think this is beyond sort of an attack around sort of MNAV valuation and more about eliminating or just deterring or just ruining MicroStrategy's 10-12% products because Wall Street, JP Morgan doesn't offer anything like that?
Right. No, I can't rule that out. I mean, Wall Street is great at punishing you if they're not getting what they want or you're doing something they don't like. I mean, Bitcoin was punished for over a decade, right? Because we're considered a threat to the traditional financial system. So I could see that. I mean, it's there was a lot of rhetoric back and forth. I saw on Twitter about that JP Morgan didn't really short MicroStrategy, but they had bought a lot of puts, and prior to buying those puts, they had sold a bunch of shares. And so, if anything, this looks like they knew this problem with MSCI was coming, so they unloaded. They took an additional. They bought puts, so they didn't actually short the stock, but they are benefiting from downward pressure on the stock. So look at these companies know stuff long before we do. And I think JP Morgan took advantage of it, or at least their traders did. Not that Jamie Dimon had any awareness at all about any of this stuff. But it wouldn't surprise me that when price gets to a certain level, they all come piling back in.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. You make a lot of great points there. The death cross warning that we just went through. Bitcoin's 50-day moving average just crossed below its 200-day moving average. The dreaded death cross. Is this a harbinger of doom or an overhyped signal? Historically, have savvy traders seen this as a buy cue instead? What do you think, Paul?
Well, look at death crosses in bull markets have oftentimes been quickly reversed. Death crosses.
Would you call this a bull market?
In a bear market, if we truly have crossed into a bear market, then there's probably significantly more downside. So it kind of depends on your view of the next few months. I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards the bear market scenario here. I could see a relief rally in the meantime, but I'm leaning towards further downside. So, but that's coming from a guy who doesn't trade, who doesn't analyze charts very well, has never been successful at trading. So I just purely look at this as an opportunity to start buying sats at cheaper prices. And the lower it goes, the more I get every time I buy, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not see this as legendary entry point, but doesn't mean timing? I mean, is it 6 months? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 6 years?
I mean, my crystal ball says it's at least 3 to 6 months. Probably not as deep as previous bear markets because we didn't go as high. But I mean, anywhere between 80 and 40, I'm stacking as hard as humanly possible.
Any thoughts here, Ben?
Yeah, I'm not really expecting to go too much lower. The I've seen a number of metrics comparing the liquidations and the capitulation we had over the last month to the 2022 bottom and the COVID crash, and that makes me think that like the of sentiment has happened in the market. Now, I'm not expecting us to like start ripping back up. I do kind of expect a bit of a potentially a dead cat bounce idea with just like the language coming from the Trump administration is like very positive, very, very pro liquidity. But will that liquidity actually come? I think that we might see a top when people start realizing that that's not going to come until maybe early next year, mid next year, when they actually start gearing up to print money for midterms.
The only thing I can say now is with everyone getting so bearish, it kind of makes me bullish. All right, let's move on to the next one here. There's a great clip coming up.
I know you got a lot of thoughts on Bitcoin. Yeah. Can you give us your, let's say your latest view and your criticisms on the asset?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand is that Bitcoin has marketed itself as multiple different things to try to appeal to investors at various points in time. The initial implementation under the Satoshi white paper was a peer-to-peer payment system. The idea being that our payment systems, the rails of the payment systems, ultimately depend on the banking system. And so by moving to a distributed ledger and a peer-to-peer system, we'd be able to get banks out of the system, right? That's been a total failure. There are almost no real transactions that are occurring in Bitcoin. We have tons of transaction activity in speculative markets trading Bitcoin, but the actual quantity of retail transactions or peer-to-peer payments that occur over the Bitcoin network are remarkably small. And I'm sure every Bitcoiner out there can tell you the anecdote of, oh, I transferred $1,000 to somebody else, right? It's an immaterial component of its utilization. The second component is you have to understand that Bitcoin was born out of a philosophy coming from the global financial crisis, the crisis that was created by banks by the overextension of credit. The banking system ultimately depends on credit. We talk about the expansion of the money supply, that money printing is occurring, et cetera. There's two types of money printing. There's money printing that comes from the government, in which they largely are trying to smooth over mistakes that have been made, right? We make a mistake around COVID. We need a whole bunch of money to pay people so that they don't starve to death when we shut down the economy. We make a mistake when we decide that the housing market is extraordinarily robust and can accommodate any amount of credit that has been extended. As that credit defaults, it ultimately shrinks the collateral that's available, destroys wealth that people believe that they have. They shrink their spending in response to it. That means other business models now start to fail. And the government basically creates a do-over by printing money. The more frequent type of printing money is the extension of credit. You go to the bank and you say, hey, I'd like a loan for $1,000. They give you $1,000. They didn't actually take the money out of somebody else's account. They simply created a new account for you called your checking account that has $1,000 in it because you've been approved for this loan. That expansion is it's totally normal and it has a credit function associated with it. But Bitcoin destroys the ability to do that because it was intentionally designed to skip the banking system. And so it is effectively just a monetary system where what you're really seeing as Bitcoin is effectively the tokens that are paid to the accounting firms that keep the blockchain in order. That's really every Bitcoin that's out there is basically a payment to Deloitte and Touche, right? We're going to continue to do the accounting for this. In exchange for that, you're going to give us a shrinking share of new coins. Because you can't extend credit in that framework, right? No new money can be created. There is no capacity for mistake forgiveness in that type of framework. It ultimately becomes very limiting. Interest rates and credit spreads are just too high for a real economy framework. And that's by and large what we've seen. It hasn't emerged as a payment system. It hasn't emerged in any meaningful economic context, despite the fact that the asset has appreciated dramatically. The other issue is because we have a finite quantity of it, ultimately, that means everybody who is born after the Bitcoin have been released finds themselves in deficit in a manner that you would basically be a serf living off land in the 14th century that didn't belong to you, and there was no other land that would ever become available to you because you actually couldn't acquire it. It creates a deeply unequal society. This is something that I recognized very early on. And to be clear, I was an early adopter of Bitcoin because I thought it was actually a really interesting idea. What happens if we decide that we have private money? The problem is if you run through the simulation, Bitcoin, because there is a finite quantity of tokens, means that it basically plays like a monopoly game, right? There is no entity that can accommodate unlimited growth. You can't add additional players as the game is being played in Monopoly because they're just going to lose very quickly. They don't have any of the properties. They don't have any of the money, right? And so they're going to be losers in that system over and over again. How does every game of Monopoly end?
Someone wins.
With a single winner. And that's exactly what we've seen within Bitcoin. We've seen increased concentration of Bitcoin in absolute defiance of what the Bitcoiners all argue, that it was divisible and that everybody would end up getting it, et cetera. What we've seen is a Gini coefficient, that measure of inequality in the Bitcoin world, that is beyond anything we've ever seen in the real world, right? It's a system that ultimately collapses upon itself and locks people out. Far from democratizing access, it does the exact opposite.
All right, who wants to respond to that criticism first?
I got something. The biggest thing I really heard from him is the fiat apology, and it's a lot of framing the onus on Bitcoin when really the onus on Bitcoin to provide positive outcomes, when one of the biggest benefits of Bitcoin is just avoiding the negative outcomes of fiat, and that's realistically enough for a lot of people to get the huge benefits. And the ability to paper over and make mistakes constantly just decreases the danger of those mistakes and increases the frequency. So a lot of just not realizing the downside of fiat because he is in a position where he doesn't really experience the downside of it, and minimizing the issues with it.
Paul?
I couldn't hear the whole clip. I only caught the comment of the Gini coefficient at the end, and so my only pushback there is that this distribution has over the last year has been massive and persistent, and that distribution has been consistently bought. So when you see the central bank at the Czech Republic buying Bitcoin, you see the massive adoption that's spreading through Africa, where they don't care about volatility. They just want SaaS because it's so much better than fiat. Sovereign wealth, pension funds, etc., buying Bitcoin to help support their goals to create a retirement for people in the United States, or to shore up the balance sheet of. I think Bitcoin is doing exactly the opposite of what he's talking about, which is distributing from the few early winners to the rest of the world that's going to be holding this asset for the long term. I didn't hear 90% of what he said, but knowing Mike, I'm sure it's relative to, dollars going to go up, bonds are going to go up, and everything else is going to die, and you better follow the old Wall Street game. So I don't know. I don't think he really brought the future of decentralized money.
He was trying to throw some FUD or sort of discredit Bitcoin, but BitPain was on X and he said, "Here is Mike Green, who famously refused to buy Bitcoin at $25 cost basis on the advice of his wife, dismissing the significance of a U.S. state buying Bitcoin at 85,000 cost basis because they only bought $10 million worth." Maybe he's just salty. Let's move on to the next one here. We got China. China's got a mining comeback here. They quietly reclaimed 14% of global Bitcoin hash power in October. Has the mining dragon truly awakened from its 2021 ban, and will cheap Chinese power catapult the next bull cycle?
Did they take it back? Did they take it back, or did they just finally disclose that they never got rid of it?
I guess they got rising hash power.
Okay.
So I think they sort of reclaimed 14%. I don't know how high they were prior. But.
I know there was around 10% not too long ago. So maybe it's about a 4% increase.
Which is 40% on their own turf.
Yeah. That's good. I mean,
I think it's good for Bitcoin.
I mean, the global hash wars are good for Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, my first instinct was really, did it ever really disappear?
I think they just moved it around.
But what a like crowd, what a resource the electricity in China that is not being used for Bitcoin,
Mm.
that is a sleeping dragon to awake. And, our enemies are going to get Bitcoin. And I don't necessarily want China to get a ton of Bitcoin, but I think that Bitcoin ends up getting into every society, every person, and potentially like awakening the desires for freedom. Who knows if that ever gets to Chinese people, but I don't want to say the more Bitcoin miner, but to that, the more Bitcoin everywhere, and there's so much power being developed in China.
It's gonna be interesting when they're dam power, but when nuclear power gets focused on Bitcoin mining. All right, let's jump to the next one here. Oh, Italy opens a pathway, for residency by you can now Italy now grants investor visas for 250,000 stake in a Bitcoin focused startup, and that's euros. Does this mark Europe's first real experiment in tying national residency rights to Bitcoin exposure, or just sort of a clever arbitrage on immigration law?
To me, it just seems like it's a new twist on an old visa program that they've had. So maybe they attract some people that want to get exposure to Bitcoin and have access to Italy and the EU at large. But I mean, as an American, I don't know how attractive this would be, because you're going to be taxed on your global income anyways. Maybe it makes a lot more sense from people from other countries. I don't know. It seemed, I mean, it's great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the more investment, or the more reasons to invest in Bitcoin, the better. But didn't seem to be like a game changer from where I'm coming from.
All right. Yeah. Ben, you want to jump in here?
It seems like a nothing burger on the specifics there, but I imagine that there is going to be this arm race to attract Bitcoiners, and Italy's got some pretty nice spots to be, and they need to differentiate themselves from the rest of Europe, given the regulatory framework in Europe. So that kind of hurts them as of now, but I imagine that we're going to see the dissenting European states trying to attract Bitcoiners, trying to attract Bitcoin wealth, despite the overarching European that field.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, we'll keep an eye
They're
on
just
that.
they're gonna have to throw some better offers out there.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm looking forward to, the competition. Let's see it hopefully increases. Let's get to the next one. I want to see the Sailor clip here.
I don't hear it.
Yeah, we don't have any sound. Sorry, I messed up.
All right. Well, Sailor is floating the idea of digital credit as the new fixed income. What do you think, Paul? Do you think this is going to stick, especially with all the sort of trouble they're having now with the MCSI?
Yeah, let's talk in 6 months. Let's see if it sticks. I mean, look at them. You look at the. Oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Just need to restore some reputation to that, because ever since they launched all those, it's been pretty down. So they need to show that they can recover in that regard before anyone starts taking that seriously.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much does strategy need, Bitcoin price to pump for this to all play out? More in the short term.
I forget who did it on X, but there was a pretty good analysis, right? As to attract enough buyers into, I believe it's Stretch, they've got to keep raising interest rates, and if they keep raising the interest rate on Stretch into a falling Bitcoin price, you can get to a point where it looks pretty grim. Regardless of the fact that they don't have a lot of outstanding debt, right? So I think the price of Bitcoin going up is directly tied to Strategy's long-term ability to keep these perpetual credit offerings in good standing. Because it would, right now, right, he raises the interest rate to attract more interest in that security. That's all well and fine, but if he gets to the point where he has to pull some of those triggers to lower the interest rate, change the terms, then you could kill the reputation of that security.
And is at any point is he not forced to sell, like liquidate, but to sell a little bit of Bitcoin to cover either expenses or show the market that he's sort of gonna, like, you know, sort of provide some.
I mean, sure. There's things that could go wrong in the global economy, the financial sector, right? If you can't borrow at a cheap rate, if you can't issue the credit at lower rates and get any interest, it's there's everything's a possibility in these markets, especially going into the type of environment where you're basically having some sort of reset on the debt of the United States, whether you like it or not. So we'll see.
All the time strategy bought, and everyone said, "Look, price didn't go up." And I wonder how much, if strategy sold, how much actual impact it would have on the market. If they didn't tell anyone and they were selling. But let's say they told people they were selling, I bet market sentiment would turn dramatically.
Sure.
So
I think so too. I mean, you could get into a position where, this is one of the triggers and one of the fears that could really turn this bear market on, and maybe even signal the bottom. Right, every bottom of every bear market we've had, there's been a sacred cow that's been slaughtered. I hope it's not strategy, because I do believe in it, that he's trying to do something really cool. But somebody is going to get hurt, and that will be the sign that it's over. Everyone will be petrified and think Bitcoin is dead finally again. Yeah, I mean, you could see a potential path that would lead to some catastrophic outcomes. At least that's the way I think about it.
A better perspective is about 180 degrees from where it is now in a year's time.
Okay, let's say in a year's time, Bitcoin is $145,000, right? And let's say that's October, and then come January, it's back down to 101. Are we having the same conversation, or are they just going to have the same balance sheet just times 0.25? You know what I mean? Or is it going to be in a different place for them completely? Like, at what point do they sort of break out of, like, what happens to Bitcoin price downward in the next 6 months, and is that a threat to strategy?
Well, they need the volatility, correct? They can win up or down. It's obviously more beneficial for them to be up, but if we're talking about another year of up sideways to 150 for round numbers and then back down to 100, I'm seeing another consolidation event and another higher low that ultimately ends up being extremely bullish in the long term. If that happens in the backdrop of the amount of money printing that I expect over 2026, that is concerning, and I would, expect gold to be some insane bull run, stealing all that capital. But the scenario you lined out is not. It's painful because we hope for more, we expect more, and this past year has been a bit frustrating. But it's ultimately a pretty damn bullish setup.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be more bullish, this setup. All right, let's move on to the next one. So a little bit of a continuation of the thread. So I don't know if you guys just want to bury this, move on, but the MicroStrategy bear rumor is continuing the thread. Did JP Morgan actually short MSTR to shake out Bitcoin supporters, or was that viral tweet all hat and no cattle? Is MSTR being targeted by bad actors spreading FUD?
I don't know if it's bad actors. I think there's a bigger question for all these treasury companies, which is,
are they just closed-end funds?
Right. If your entire business, or the vast majority of your business, in MSCI's case, right, it's more than 50% of your business is based on just holding Bitcoin and relying on multiples on your MNAV to be able to sell shares, to be able to buy more Bitcoin, that accretive dilution. If that's your business model, then I think you're going to see these treasury companies just compress to 1M now. And then you have to figure out, how do you run this business model if your MNAV's 1 all the time?
Right.
Or the volatility above and below 1 is tiny, right?
Yeah.
And then what's your true value? Now I think Saylor's got some really interesting stuff going on with all of his credit offerings. And I think those credit offerings are really, really cool and brilliant. I just don't, we'll just have to see how the market takes it, right? And I think the market needs to see that these credit facilities are going to be there. These securities are going to be there through thick and thin. And if he makes it through a bear market cycle, then I think they'll come piling right into it.
All right. Let's see. All right. Let's go to the last topic here on El Salvador. All right. IMF versus Bitcoin. The IMF warns El Salvador over its Bitcoin laws, but Bukele keeps buying dips, apparently. Is this friction highlighting a currency sovereignty battle or just normalizing crypto in the face of fiat instability?
Thoughts?
I don't know if he's buying Bitcoin. There's been some, is he moving it around?
He's buying it, Cedric. He's buying Bitcoin.
And
he's
how
giving the
material is
IMF
it?
the finger.
I don't know. He's working with the IMF.
Sure. And he's buying Bitcoin.
Anyone who's gone against the IMF. No one who's gone against the IMF.
What are they going to do? So let's say he keeps paying the IMF and he keeps buying Bitcoin. What are they going to do? Are they going to be like, we're just going to default on you even though you're paying your debt?
Well, he's risking future financing. I mean, they are, it's quite a lifeline they're giving him, whether it's predatory or not. I mean, they're talking several billions of dollars or tens of billions of dollars.
Who's the biggest contributor to the IMF?
Who's the biggest contributor?
Yeah.
The states.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, you would think...
Who are the biggest participants in El Salvador?
You would think he's protected by the state. He's said, yeah, no, Tether is headquartered there. I mean, it seems like a closed loop there.
It's all good. El Salvador's going to be just fine.
Good. I saw they had a big dinner down there with Giacomo Zuccomo. He handed Bukele a bottle of rum called, he gifted him a bottle of rum called Dictator.
Yes. I mean, he's running the MAGA playbook to see if Trump can run for a third term. I mean, they're
and you think he's truly independent?
I think Bukele's truly independent?
Yeah, and not protected by the states if he's going to go against the IMF here.
Oh no, I think he's.
Have you ever seen anyone? What?
I think he has the blessing of the United States. I wouldn't say protected, but I think he's been blessed.
I think so.
Just like when Tether came out of those congressional hearings, and they were blessed.
Tether bought a bunch of gold, Paul. What do you think?
I'm sorry.
Tether bought a bunch of gold.
Well, they've had gold for some time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read you
gold, Bitcoin, treasuries.
But that graph that came out that was
gold.
Exactly that.
Yeah, Tether bought more gold last quarter than every central bank. What the fuck is up with that?
Somebody might have told them, "Hey, buy some gold."
That's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got another one. Rohan Harani says, I mean, what did people expect? You don't just walk into the $150 trillion fixed income cartel and sustainably offer 8 to 12% yields without making some enemies. JP Morgan is just the first domino. Those who've spent decades selling investors a safe 2 to 4% yield are not going to sit quietly while one firm shows up with a structure that can plausibly deliver 3 to 5x that. For years, anyone offering 10% was usually a DeFi casino, a fund about to blow up, or some risky scheme that TradFi knew wouldn't survive for long. So they were shrugged off as not a threat. But strategy is different. It's simple and it's terrifying for traditional credit issuers. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. No institution can sustainably match 8 to 12% without touching Bitcoin. and most of them are starting way behind the 8 ball. So if they can't compete fairly, some are going to try competing unfairly. That's just how entrenched systems behave. Strategy had a massive head start because everyone else mocked them or assumed they'd blow up. And there's still a ton of turbulence ahead, but the direction of travel is obvious. Bitcoin-centered digital credit will punch a giant hole straight through the fixed income market. Not overnight, but step by step in a way the old system can't keep up with. Interesting take.
No, that's very well said.
Yeah, I mean, it's curious that just after listening to Jack's Monday night show, a lot about offering those same products, like cash, interest on your cash, and since that just basically goes into allowing more Bitcoin loans, they can pay 6, 7, 8% interest on that. And it's curious that the two things that are being attacked during this bear market are the two things that are directly going after these big entrenched systems.
Yeah, you challenge treasuries, you're going to have a challenge in front of you.
Well, they're trying to become buyers of treasuries, though, right? I mean, I don't think you can offer interest on sort of the stable coins unless you offer. I guess it's technically Bitcoin backed. This is going to be interesting how this rolls out, but I think you have to sort of have the treasuries to offer the interest.
Yeah, but I thought we were talking about interest on the credit
Bitcoin
that Sailor's creating.
Right.
That's
well, I mean,
which
if they are fighting him, I mean, how good of a fight do you think they could put up? If you know what I mean on that?
Pretty good. they got a big.
Well, I mean, can they just delay for a year or two, or like, can they really set it back 5-10 years? You know, and would it be in their best interest to try and do, you know, to sort of derail stable coins and crypto and all that, or can they set strategy back?
Yeah, I don't know that they're interested in derailing stable coins.
Sure, but can they? But I think if you derail Bitcoin, I think you sort of push back the rollout, I think, of stablecoins and crypto. And I think it's very related to Bitcoin prices going up really helps the momentum of rolling those other things out.
I just think that I think the point of that tweet was that, look, if the entire mission of the big banks that own the central bank are to have as much liquidity as possible in the treasury market, because they are forced buyers of the treasury market, right? And anything that threatens that makes their life miserable and weakens their business model, right? So if Sailor is successful at this, and then it starts being copied in every major jurisdiction, every major financial market around the world, that dethrones the treasury market much more quickly. So instead of a controlled demolition that they can steer the Titanic through, they're going to have rough seas and chaos. So I think they're going to fight it the whole time, regardless of Sailor's success or not. Bitcoin is going to keep doing it's what Bitcoin does. We got to this point, without institutions, and we will continue. So Bitcoin is designed to go up forever. The supply is going to be constantly shrinking. New buyers are emerging globally all the time, and the best that JP Morgan can do, or any financial institution could do, is delay the inevitable.
All right,
Bitcoin for sure. But with MSTR, it seems like they smell the blood in the water. And if there was one chance to like take them out or derail what they're doing, now is it. But if MSTR succeeds, makes it through this low period and really gets back, shows strength and shows resilience, it gets a lot harder to cut it out, to get it out of there. So this is their opportunity. And yeah, sure, MSTR was down a lot before this, back in the bear market, but they weren't offering these yield products. So it was just cute back then. And yeah, now it's something that could be existential risk. And it's Bitcoin really attacking the financial system head on as the best way to give the best way to give these the dividend markets. I'm blanking on the word. We were just talking about it.
But the players in this are interesting because like Lutnick, Cantor Fitzgerald has a huge position, I think, in MicroStrategy, don't they?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me.
So, all right, Francis, we got any questions or comments in the chat there?
We got a quick comment.
Robert Schmidt says Tether made a gold stablecoin. That's why they bought the gold.
True. Good job. Thanks for filling that blank in for us. I remember that. Yep.
What do you think of that, Paul? You think?
I mean,
are we gonna get like a beef stablecoin?
What do I think of it? There's been gold-backed digital tokens for as long as I've been in Bitcoin. None of them have ever taken off. If anybody in the world has the connections to make a viable gold token, it's Tether. They've got all the right connections, so I'm sure it's going to be a good market for them. But it's at the end of the day, I think
gold bugs.
At the end of the day, the true value of gold is the fact that it's not digital
and it's not dollars,
right?
So it's kind of a paradox.
Well, no, I don't believe this is a gold-backed dollar stablecoin. This is, I believe, and maybe this listener can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's just a gold-pegged token. So it fluctuates with the price.
Like more like represents an ounce of gold.
Yeah, so it's a way to trade gold easily that sits in vaults.
Sure, so, we hypothecated also like 1,000.
I don't know that it's rehypothecated, but it is just a simple way of gold sitting in vaults, have a digital token issued on top of them that they can be traded.
All right, cool. Fair enough. All right. Anything else in there, Francis?
That's it for tonight.
All right, man. Well, this was awesome with Ben jumping in.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry to hear you had some troubles beforehand.
Oh, that's all right. That's what happens when you try and drive an old truck.
Well, join us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for Bitcoin Center. My name is Cedric Youngelman. This was Ben Justman jumping in and Paul Tarantino hopping on for the end here. This is brought to you by Byte Federal, so go bank yourself. You got the Bitcoin ATM, the crypto wallet, and the point of sale, and put that stuff in self-custody.
I'm looking forward to joining you in the shed next week, Cedric.
All right, next week, brother. Maybe we'll have Ben call in.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Love to.
See you guys next
week. All right, guys. Thanks.
Peace.